And
Yes.
we will begin. We'll see who we get. So I think the subtitle for this is we've been doing faith and calm, calm and faith, faith and calm, calm and faith. This is faith and healing now. And I wonder why? Because we're entering the month of Iyar. We're ending Nisan, the month of miracles, and we're going into the month of Iyar. Iyar spelled Aleph Yud Yud Resh, and the rabbis explain that it stands for Ani, I, Hashem, Yud Yud, Rafa'echa, will heal you. So God is saying, you know, I'm the healer. I take care of you. I'm going to watch over you. That's an important message for this month, and I'll try and connect that to what's going on in the world and why that's such a good message, what's going on. Now, one of the things that's happening today in this world is that people are reacting in different manners. Some people are reacting, and for good reasons. All their security blankets have been taken away, and they're wondering what's going to be with them, what's going to be with my institutions, what's going to be my shul, what's going to be with my family, what's going to be with schools, what's going to be with my job. Yeah, me too. We're all in the same boat. That's the wonderful thing about this. Nobody knows what's going to be. You'll ever get into Whole Foods ever again, you know, or anything else, you know. When is it going to do? This new normal going to go back? But
I just even
what they're
know.
saying at work is they said don't expect anything, you know. This is the new normal, and you know, and we're budgeting accordingly. That this goes on for a year, year and a half, or longer. So wow. So something is going to, it's quite, so that could be very perturbing. And, you know, I understand that. I feel it too. We're all in the boat. And that's wonderful about right now is everything is in this, you know, the same feeling. But that shouldn't lead to paralysis. What we're really actually, God is asking is for us to use this opportunity where we don't have all these other distractions around us. No, it looks good light up right this way.
Okay, fine.
To use this opportunity to be able to overcome and to overpower and to go outwards rather than to be driven from all these things outside. You know, I have to go to the stores, I have to do this, I have to travel, I have to do the other kinds of stuff. Now you don't. And now you can be driven from inwards. And that's good news. That's really good news. And that's really a good experience and so forth. So we really, you know, it's sort of how you have to reframe the question and think about it. What am I supposed to be doing? How am I reconnecting to myself? How am I reconnecting? And then instead of letting other people drive me and other fears drive me and other events drive me, I need to become a person who actually has an inner core. And you always have that inner core. It's always inside of you. You have that. Do a little exercise, you know, turn out the lights, close your eyes, and just think about who I am and who I am supposed to be without any of these labels and names and job definitions or anything else going on. And you know what? It takes time, but you know that you'll find out you're pretty amazing because God says you are amazing. You are a note in my divine orchestra, and without that one little cymbal clash at the end of the play, it's not the same piece. I need you. You don't think it's very important. You think it's minor what you're doing. You think it's not as good as other people. Well, that's what God just told you. On the Seder night, you can't rely on the rabbi or the big person. You got to do it yourself. And I love it how you do it. It's the individual is come to the fore. It's not about the shul. It's not what's going on around you. It's that individual now. And God is saying, I need you. I care about you. And everything that you're doing is so fantastic. And if you think it's not, I'm telling you, God has just given us the message. It's about you. It's nobody else around. It's just you and you. So that's one of the first messages I think of this season. The second message that I wanted to get was, it says, yeah, about healing and so forth. So it's an interesting thing. This week's Parsha is, you might think, you know, it's sort of abstract and not really relevant to us, but really everything in Torah really comes down is very much us. It says that Zos Torah's Adam, this is the Torah of a person. And the Kabbalists explain, the Zohar explains, it's Kabbalist, the Zohar explains that they put Torah together with a person because everything about the human being is in the original source, which is the blueprint. Just like a builder, when he builds a building, he has a building blueprint, and everything in the actual building is eventually sourced inside of the blueprint. So too, everything in the person that's going on is also sourced in Torah. So in Torah, it explains, and why is that? I mean, God needed a blueprint to create the world. So the answer is, the Torah is, some people think of Torah as a nice book of stories. Some people think it's a bunch of laws ordering you to do things. Some people see it as, is nice little advice about sort of things, but I have my own life. And what the Zohar is explaining is that everything that happens in the world is in the blueprint. And so anything that's happening in your psychological or emotional nature, in your personal life or anything else, you can find the answers within Torah. And if you're not learning Torah that way, you got to learn it differently. Because if you think it's something that's just imposed,
7313113.
if you think it's something that's just imposed on you, then you really aren't getting the point. It's not that God is sitting there and he's an angry grandfather sitting on a throne and he's telling people, and he's keeping a book. Everybody is allowed in.
Emily's trying to get in. Did you admit
They're
everybody?
all, there's no waiting
There's
room.
no waiting room?
There's no waiting room. There's no waiting room. I don't see anybody there waiting. Okay. So, yep. So the actual answer is no, God is with you. He loves you deeply and intensely. It says that, and the Friedrich Rebbe said that there's a line in the Hallel we say, Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha. Ana is spelled, Ana usually means please. Please Hashem, save me, or something of that sort. He says Ana actually means, Ana in this case is spelled with a hey, and it means anywhere. So it means wherever you are.
This will be Emily.
You have to do it. I'm talking.
But
I
you don't want to wear it on your head?
Well,
Can you put it on your head? Here, thank you. Okay, good. Awesome.
okay.
For some reason, she can't get in. It's
All
not
right.
accepting her. Okay.
All right.
I wonder
I
if
don't know.
other people can't get in.
I don't know.
Pardon?
Get in.
Everybody seems to go in, and everybody is there, and I couldn't, Anyway,
Okay.
let's just keep going because time is going to run
Okay.
out here. So there's a story that's told. I like it very much. So there was once a lady. She was traveling from Israel. That's a hypothetical story. And she was traveling with a little baby, and she was doing one of these world tours. And she first stopped in Japan, then she stopped in Australia, and then she went on to India. Then from India, she went to Israel. From Israel, she went to Europe. It was one of these whirlwind tours, went all over the whole continent, all over the whole world. If you asked this lady where she was the last 2 weeks, she would have said, I was in Japan, I was in India, I was in Israel. But if you could ask the little baby she was carrying around in her lap, where were you all the time? The baby would, if you could answer, would say, where was I? I was in my mother's lap the whole time. That's where I was. that's where. So God is with you in all these situations. He's there. He's the one. You have something like 40 trillion to 100 trillion blood cells in your body, and maybe 1 trillion white blood cells. And every virus, your white blood cells go to work, and they start attacking and dealing with all those viruses. He's watching over you your whole life. Everything that's happened to you, everything that goes on with your body, every instant, he's watching over and he's keeping track of that. He's the one that's doing it. Where's God? God is there. He's in all the parts of my life. Zos Torah Adam. He's everywhere inside of me. And he's in all my experiences too. And what he's asking sometimes is something easy and in the comfort zone. And sometimes he's asking me to step up and find something deeper inside of me. The people who are thriving in this situation are the ones that are really coming to the fore, are the ones that stop focusing on themselves. And they start thinking about what can I be doing and how can I be helping other people and those people, they stop thinking about yourself. So here's a little exercise you can try. Yeah, close your eyes. Just think about yourself and stop thinking about, what's going on the outside and so forth and what you can do to find deeper resources in yourself. Because here's the news, what's a disease? A disease is ultimately seen in Chassidus as, is something that just touches the external part of yourself. This parsha is called Tazria Mitzora. A Mitzora, a leper, is somebody gets a skin infection, a skin disease. and he has to be quarantined, interestingly enough. It's not a message that he's bad. It's a message that, put yourself away, quarantine yourself, and start thinking, what was the causes that did this? It only touches you on the outside. Nega, the word in Hebrew for plague, disease or plague, means something that just touches you. It only touches you. It doesn't get to the core of you. It doesn't hurt your core of who you are. So it's only on the external. The internal is always good and always healthy. And that's what it ultimately is supposed to do, bring out something deeper inside of you. And when you're done, you have antibodies. What are antibodies? Those would only be developed once you've already got sick. Ah, Emily just showed up. Okay.
She got in?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
You can take this off.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So that's really the general outline of what I wanted to talk about. That this is a time and this is an era where you have your choices. You can either be driven by what's going on externally to you and all the events that's happening to, or you can say, you know what, I'm giving a chance to overcome and find who the inner core of who I am and what my capabilities are and what my talents are. And you know what, people who go through these sort of things, like, so here's an interesting story I heard. Just read it today. I thought I was going to finish with that story. So Jonathan Sachs is also talking a little bit. Jonathan Sachs was the ex-chief rabbi of Great Britain. He still writes a daily or weekly explanation of the Parsha and so forth. This week, he came out with a very interesting connection. He wrote half the thing, which he usually doesn't do, about a movie that came out a couple of years ago with Tom Hanks, and it was called It's a Beautiful Time in the Neighborhood. And it was about Fred Rogers, right, Fred Rogers. And it was an interesting story. This story came about. It's a real life story. I didn't know this part of the story at all. He said there was a reporter.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, Fred Rogers.
You might have seen it.
Before your time. Sorry. So anyway, Fred Rogers did a kids show, and he used to, he always used to sing "It's a Beautiful Time in the Neighborhood." He just had a very slow, calming figure, and so forth. Very, very comforting and so forth for the children and so forth. And then, they had him every day for 40 years or something on TV and so forth like that. One day, one of the editors of a newspaper decided he was going to have different columns on some of the most famous and important heroes of our day. And he assigned one reporter to do Fred Rogers. This reporter, though, was an interesting character. He was Mr. Critical. He was famous for tearing down big people and finding flaws in their character and stuff like that. And he says, I don't know why Fred Rogers agreed to me, because I'm going to just expose this guy as a complete fraud and fake and or a simpleton, that just likes to sing to kids or something like that. So he came in with a real chip on his shoulder. And he had a reason why he had a chip on his shoulder. He had a terrible relationship with his father, and they came to a wedding of somebody, and they were actually had blows with each other. It was a terrible relationship, and he wasn't speaking to his father for years. And so he had a real negative attitude to everybody and everyone, and he used that in his writing, in his newspaper stuff. So he gets to Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers just completely disarmed the guy. And the guy said, he said, you probably he just turned the focus around, and he just said, from not on me, but what's with you and what's going on with you? And the guy began to just really start looking at his life and who he was. And at one point he said to Fred, he said, Fred, you probably like talking to people like me because I'm a broken, miserable person and stuff like that, and you like fixing them, because he had a very deep psychology approach. Fred says, no. I see you as a person with tremendous talents, a very high sense of values. That's why you got into fights with your father. And you should know that the father, he gave you those traits. He gave you all of that stuff. So if you're fighting with him, maybe you should look and see, what is it? Because everything that you see good in yourself about campaigning for good, it's probably came from your father. And the guy just completely turned it. He wrote a beautiful story, and then they turned it into a movie about Fred and what he was able to do. So, it's, in the guy, the bottom line the reporter said is, you see the power of goodness. If you focus on doing good for other people, and you focused on not on yourself and whether you're getting and what's calamities are happening to you, but you focus on doing good for other people, you become a different person, and you become an influencer, and you become an effect. And I think that's one of the things that, we could all, I include myself, we could always think about a little bit more in this time, and we can really change things. And this is what the challenge. It seems like this is the challenge that we've been given. And I'm going to now turn over the camera to my wife and let her continue with the thoughts.
Thank you, Haskell Shimon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. We're purposefully speaking short tonight because we want to leave time for questions and answers this time. And Amy, if I forget, remind me to say why it's an auspicious date, okay?
Oh, that's why I got on. I got to know.
Okay, good. So anyway, so Haskell Shimon and I learned that so he already said that the parsha was Tazria Metzora, and the Rebbe he gave talks on every parsha in the last year that he was speaking, and they are blockbuster talks. And so the one for Tazria Metzora is no less than a blockbuster. And it says that what is a plague? And it talks about what a plague is at the end of Jewish history, at the cusp of when Mashiach is coming. And it talks about a plague in our time. So Rebbe says, what is the essence of a plague? And I'm not going to show you, I'm not going to say how he develops it, but I'll just give you the conclusion. He says that a plague, especially at this time, is really extreme. It's the result of extremely high spiritual lights, trying to come down into this world and not finding a home. They can't find a home, and since they can't find a home, they come back down in this distorted form, and something very negative, something undesirable, and but it's really what it is in essence is something extraordinarily spiritual, extraordinarily holy. So the Rebbe says, what is the cure for such a thing? What is the cure for such a plague? And he said the cure for such a plague is recognizing what it is in its source, recognizing what it truly is, not being thrown by its appearances. And when you recognize it as something truly holy and something that's trying to make its way down into this world, then you've made a home for it, and it can then become translated into good things. So so anyway, it's that's what that's what this is. I'm not a Rebbe, and I'm not in anything, but no, I'm not a Rebbe, and I'm not in anything, but I'm a Jew, Baruch Hashem, which is an incredible thing. But it pays to, at all times, it pays to focus on reality. And reality is that this is Hashem. Reality is that this very strange virus that has forced us all into our home, that has caused tremendous destruction and all these different things, is in essence godliness that's trying to make its way down into this world, and that it's not to underplay the terrible destruction that's going on. It's not to underplay any of that, but it is its reality. And so the way to make a home for it is to say, you know what, Hashem, you're not fooling me. This is you. It's not Corona. This is you. And okay, so I'll come back to that point later. The next thing that I want to say is this fascinating thing that the Rebbe said in 1977. The Rebbe said in 1977, the Rebbe was 75 years old, and he had a devastating heart attack, a massive, massive heart attack while he was speaking, and then I think it was while he was speaking, or it was during when everybody was in the synagogue, when there was a big it could have been Simchas Torah, some big event, and then he refused to go to the hospital. He said, I want to stay in 770. They brought him into a private quarters there. And he said, I'm staying here. I'm not going to the hospital. And it was fascinating. The event itself is just fascinating because they immediately, got on the phone. It's Shabbos, it's Yontif, it's everything. They got, you can break all laws to save a life. They got on the phone. They ordered all sorts of hospital equipment. They turned his place in 770 into a little hospital ward, and people went home, and they ran home. This is it. Unless you know a lot of Orthodox Jews, it's not going to seem strange to you, but this seems very strange to somebody who knows Orthodox Jews. Shabbos, Yontif, they ran home. They grabbed all the money that they can. You're not allowed to touch money on Yontif. They threw it into paper bags, and they came running to shul to pay for whatever help the Rebbe would need. So anyway, the Rebbe had a spectacular recovery, spectacular. That night, the doctors who were looking at him said, we hate to tell you, but we see that there's another one on its way, and it's going to be even worse than this first one. And Rebbe stayed put, and he even, he was able to function in ways that nobody with a heart attack is able to function. He took care of his personal needs himself, and he managed. So, but anyway, the next day he called his, the Rebbe spoke on Yontif. The Rebbe, the Hasidim would rely on the Rebbe telling them what everything's all about. So he told one of his secretaries, and that secretary was like this with him, and he told this secretary, I usually speak today. I'm not going to speak. You have to speak. The doctors wouldn't let him. He would have done it. The doctors wouldn't let him. And, excuse me. And he said, I'm not going to speak, but you're going to speak. You're going to give over a message from me. And this is the message. The message is, I'm going to say it using Hebrew lingo, and then I'll explain. He said, Tzimtzum compels revelation. That's what you have to tell everybody. Tzimtzum compels revelation. So what does that mean? It means anytime you are squeezed. Tzimtzum means squeeze. Withdraw, squeeze. That's literally, tzimtzum. L'tzamtzem is to squeeze. So anytime a Jew or the Jewish people or the world is squeezed, then automatically, guaranteed, a tremendous revelation of godliness follows. So anybody who knows the Rebbe knows that after 1977, he was so much more prolific. It was amazing, all the stuff that happened after 1977. Just, boom. And also Chabad went boom all over the world. I mean, I think there are close to 5,000 Chabad houses now around the world, something like that. And there's 4,000 to 5,000. So anyway, so too, we're being squeezed right now. And if we're being squeezed, it's because there's a great revelation that's going to be coming out. And we can see that the Rebbe said once, I believe the Rebbe said this, that after World War II is a horrendous squeeze. And after that, Judaism, like, boom, took off. Like, when after World War II, the predecessor of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, arrived on the shores of America, and he said, "We're gonna make Judaism here. Everything's gonna be wonderful." And they said, and his closest Hasidim, who had been living in America, said, "Excuse me, Rebbe, we hate to tell you, we have to give you a reality check. America is different. It's not going to work here. Judaism is not going to stick here. Even Orthodox Jews, it's not going to work." And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, America is nicht andrisch. Malka, you know Yiddish, right? Yeah? Okay. America is not different. You will see America is not different. And what happened? Boom. There's not a state that doesn't have Yiddishkeit all over, Judaism all over. So, and also the Baal Tshuva movement. There was no such thing. The Baal Tshuva movement burst forward. And the B'nai Noach movement. If people don't know what the B'nai Noach movement is, there are thousands and thousands of non-Jews who today who have dropped their connection to their own religion, and they do not want to become Jewish, but they want to live according to what the Torah says for non-Jews. It's a phenomenon that is just mind-blowing. They have communities. They have yearly conventions. They have schools just for B'nai Noach, and they bother rabbis 24/7, asking them how should a non-Jew get married? How should a non-Jew get divorced? How should a non-Jew make blessings? Anyway, it's a fascinating thing. So, and we see that even now there is good news from what's happening now. Even now, there's good news. Like, there's so many good deeds being done. Everybody's becoming so nice, and everybody, the most dramatic story was sent to me by Molly. Molly, are you here? Yeah, here you are. So the most dramatic story was sent to me by Molly, that in South Africa, first of all, there's tremendously less crime going on now, and there's probably very little traffic accidents because there's nobody's driving. But anyway,
No one's driving. Yeah.
yeah, there's no traffic, but there's tremendous kindness going on all over the world. And in South Africa, they're under lockdown in South Africa. It hasn't reached the peak yet in South Africa, and they've been under lockdown for 3 weeks, and the crime rate dropped 75%. But not only did the national crime rate drop 75%, but the most remarkable thing is that in Cape Town, there are rival drug gangs that routinely kill each other. They are drug lords, and each one wants his section of the drug. They want to be the big drug leader, and these people have dropped their feud, and they are working hand in hand. One member of one feuding thing with another member of a different feuding thing. They're working hand in hand to deliver food to poor people, because to people who are starving, and they themselves are shocked at themselves. You can look it up. CBS has a report on it, and they themselves are moved by what they're doing. Like, they were killing each other, and now they're working together. It's really totally remarkable. So, as we know, the Rebbe told us that when we left Egypt, it wasn't just, when we had the redemption from Egypt, it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to speak faster. When we had the redemption from Egypt, it wasn't just that, Haskell, you have to stick around. When we had the redemption from Egypt, it wasn't just that the Jews got out of Egypt. And we have to remember that, because that redemption is a template for our redemption. It's not that it wasn't just taking the Jews out of Egypt. It was a redemption of all of Egypt. So the Jews, it happened in a figurative way. Then we took all the gold and silver and everything that they gave us, and we used it to build the Mishkan. It was an amazing thing. We used it to build the traveling temple. But now in our redemption, it's again not going to just be a redemption of the Jews. It's going to be a redemption of the entire world. The entire world is getting refined, and again, there are gorgeous things happening. You should Google what Israel is doing for the world at this point. It's just it's so beautiful. They're sending things out, tons of stuff for free. Technology. They're inventing technology and just giving it away, just saying anybody can make these things. And they made a new kind of portable ventilator, and they just showed what the technology is, so anybody who wants can make them. And but we have to say it's true. It is an incredibly challenging time, and Rabbi Mendel Futterfass once said he was a Jew who was one of the many who were thrown in prison in Russia for teaching Judaism, and he was there for a decade. And while he was there, he had nobody to be friends with but the hardcore non-Jewish criminals. And one time they had a special day for the prisoners, and they were allowed to use all their old, one of them was a tightrope walker, and he performed, and all these different people performed. So when the tightrope walker performed, everybody was holding their breath. It was amazing. They watched him walk down the tightrope holding something, and turn around and come back. And when he came back, he ran down the ladder, and he went straight over to Mendel Futterfass, and he said, Did you see? And Mendel Futterfass said, yeah, you did a great job. And he said, you were looking. What was the hardest part of all that? And Rabbi Futterfass thought for a second, and he said, I know what the hardest part was. The hardest part was when you turned around, because when you were walking, in order for a tightrope walker to stay on the tightrope, he has to concentrate on a focal point on the far wall. And then when he turns around, he concentrates on a focal point on the other one. And he can't remove his eyes from it. If he removes his eyes from it, he's going to fall down from the tightrope. So what happens when you turn? You have to close your eyes for a second. You have to lose your focus for a second. So that's a muscle. That's an analogy to tell us that's the time we're in right now. We're in a transition time, and a transition time is we're leaving the exile, but we're not yet fully in the redemption. And it's the hardest time of all because you don't know where to focus. So anyway, so it is a very, very challenging time for everybody. So anyway, I just want to reiterate that every single thing that we're going through now was everything in Jewish history was predicted in the Torah, and every prophecy that was given in the Torah has unfolded. Hashem told us a long time ago when the Torah was written. You could read it. It's 3,000 years old. It's 2,000. No, yes, it's wait. I have to figure out exactly how long. 3,331 years ago it was given. 3,332 years ago. And we were told there would be 4 exiles. There were 4 exiles. This is the 4th exile that we're in. We were told that Hashem told us, you're going to go to Israel, you're going to make it to Israel, but when you're in Israel, you're going to wax fat, and you're going to kick, and you're going to forget about me, and you're just going to say, I don't want to do these things anymore, forget it. And I'm going to throw you out of the land, because Israel can't tolerate people who are not keeping Torah. So you're going to be exiled from your land. And he also said that, it also said in the Torah that in the end of days, don't worry about it. In the end of days, you're coming back to me. And not only that, the children are going to lead their parents. Very often the children are going to do teshuvah before their parents because they're younger, they're more flexible, they're quicker to recognize the truth. So, anyway.
Who was that?
That was, no, the Torah, that's Hashem told us that in the end of times we're all going to come back to him, and there will not be one Jew lost. Not one Jew lost. Oh, somebody's talking to somebody else. Okay, good. So anyway, so that's what it said in the Torah, and we know that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he also told us all this stuff, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he proved himself as a prophet. In order to prove yourself as a prophet, you have to know the whole Torah backwards and forwards. You have to be a tzaddik, and you have to make at least 2 predictions that come true. And the Rebbe made many more than 2 public. Every public prediction that the Rebbe made came true, and he said things that a person would have to have tremendous chutzpah to say if they didn't have the information. You know, we said it before. I'm just going to say it very briefly. At the beginning of the Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein had all his Scud rockets aimed at Israel and vowed to destroy Israel, he said there's going to be chemical warheads on these things, and Israel's going to be finished. And before the war even began, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, because people were saying, we have to bring our children back from Israel. He said, you don't have to bring your children back from Israel. The ones who are studying in yeshiva, you can leave them there. Israel is going to be the safest place, and nobody's going to be hurt by these things. And after 39 Scuds fell and razed entire apartment buildings, huge buildings, crashed to the ground, not one Jew was hurt by a missile. And the Rebbe was right. They didn't need the gas masks either. He said, you're not going to need those things. And how did the Rebbe know this? Intelligence didn't know this. America didn't know this. Israel's intelligence didn't know this, but the Rebbe knew this. And I said it before, but you can't tell the story without saying, a person could not make a prophecy like that. There's only 2 ways you can make such a thing. Number one, either you're an utter scoundrel. Faith, you have to be quiet. Either you're an utter scoundrel who doesn't care at all about human life, or you're someone who knows that his source of information is higher and reliable. Okay, so, and I also told you the last time that the Rebbe said before Glasnost, before the fall of communism, the day Gorbachev took office, the Rebbe told his contacts in Israel, build housing, the Russian Jews are coming out. There's going to be such a thing. And nobody, and that person, Dr. Herman Branover, he checked all the newspapers, all the media, nobody was saying such a thing. They were all saying, this Gorbachev is a real hardliner, and things are almost certainly going to be much worse. And the Rebbe said, I know you don't think this is true, but believe me, build that housing. And anyway, I told you also that that he said that that Gorbachev, after he was no longer in office, after he had let all the Jews go, he met Herman Brandauer, and Herman Brandauer told him this story, and Gorbachev was stunned, and he said, "I would like to meet a person who knew more about what I would do the day I went into office than I knew. I had no idea that this would go this way. I had no idea that I was going to do this." And he was the author of Glasnost, and he had no idea that he was going to do it. So anyway,
Shalom Shehudis,
yeah.
I just want to interrupt you for a minute because it says less than a minute up there.
Are you
And I want
serious?
to remind you that
how do I do it?
guys that
What
what
do
you
I do?
do is that when we get cut off,
Yeah.
you just press start again for the meeting, and then we can all click back in.
Where do I press start again?
When it cuts you off, you go
Okay.
back to the Zoom, and your meeting will still be going on. When the host press start, we can just click on the link again and get
Okay.
back in.
Can I ask you a question? Does it say start? Is it going to say start where it says end meeting now?
No, it's once the meeting gets cut out,
Yeah.
then it's just going to say, you're going to see that it's still, your meeting will still be going on because you prepared it for like 2 hours.
Yes.
So you can press start again. And then once you do that, we can
Okay.
all click back in and we can have more time together.
Okay, good. Yaskol Shimon, can you come back here? Okay, good. Okay, good. So anyway, as we said before, that the Rebbe said that Rebbe told us already Mashiach is in the world. He told us Mashiach is already revealed. He told us that Mashiach's name is Menachem, and he told us at 770, which is the number of the address of the Rebbe Shul. He said that's the house of Mashiach. And had this come from anybody else, I would say. But the Rebbe never, the Rebbe never mentioned, the Rebbe was so self-effacing, so completely self-effacing. If he said something like that, it was only because he had to say it. And also, why wouldn't the Rebbe say, I am Mashiach? Why would he say Mashiach's name is Menachem? Why would he hint and not say broadly?